see. Um, cool, bro. So basically, everything that you saw there is solid. All of those are good. The way you handle it, right? Now, are there better ways to say things? Always tonalities involved and all that. What I want to give you is something that you can put on top of all of that, all of those Google Docs, and every time you're in a conversation, because I'm a very visual person. I don't know about you, but for me, I'm assuming you have at least some part of yourself that is like that, right? So for me,
Mm-hmm.
this is super helpful. Like having these types of uh, kind of pathways where you have to go down, it just makes things so much simpler.
Mm-hmm.
So the way I would look at this is you go into the price drop, and then the second section is to identify the real objection,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's really to understand what are you trying to solve specifically, right? So if they give you a smoke screen, like, oh, I have to think about it, or oh, it's interesting, oh, some bullshit, right? That doesn't give you anything. You need to ask the question, how do you mean? Or they might give you a category, but it's not the real objection,
Mm-hmm.
right? They might tell you, oh, that's a lot of money. That's a category, right? Money, but you don't know what is the real objection. And the real
Mm-hmm.
objection, what it means is that if it's each of these, money, partner, time, and fear, can be divided into logistical or fear based. So it can be money, but logistical, or money and fear, or both. Partner, logistical, partner, fear. Time, logistical, time, and fear, and then fear is fear.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So that's how you identify the real objection. It's not like the real objection is not like one of those lines where you start out right in the Google Docs. The real objection is the specific category within the major category, right? So if they say, "Oh, it's a lot of money. I've never invested that much."
So it's fear. This is like I get this. Like they are scared to basically put the money away,
Exactly.
and yeah.
Which is totally fine, right? It's normal. Like if especially if it's their first time. So you then what you do after, right? Let's take that example because it seems like it's a pretty common one for you. You go into this part, and I just focus on these three letters, the green ones, DIC, sorry, diffuse.
Mm-hmm.
She's like, hey man, it's like just imagine like I need you to like, and this worked for me in the beginning to kind of see the prospects this way. I never really had an issue, but it helped in the beginning. So the prospect is a baby. Okay, it's a child. You have to look at the prospect as if it were a child,
Uh-huh.
right? It might seem weird, but you need to. It's like, oh, I don't, oh no, I've never invested that much money. Oh, that's not a problem.
Yeah.
That's totally fine. Like no worries. I've been there. It's okay. But let's say you had the money, right? Like, what would you do? Now I'm making it too much like a talk to child, but do you get what I mean? That's the vibe, right? So let's say you had the money, like what would you like to do, Johnny? Um, well, if I had the money, um, I guess I would do it. Okay, so now we know it's money fear, right? So you have to isolate the fear. But let's say it's money logistical. Well, if I had the money, I would do it. Yes, I would do it. I would do it. Awesome, Johnny. So, I mean, what I'm hearing is that you're super excited about this. You're 100% in. We just need to figure out a way to get the money. Is that right, Johnny? Yes,
Mhm.
yes, yes. That's right. Okay. Like, this is kind of weird, man. I've never explained it this way, but I guess it kind of makes sense.
Yeah.
Um,
Uh-huh.
it also helps you to kind of not put the prospects on a pedestal, right? They're just people, but you need to have
Mhm.
reps in order to not be intimidated. It took me a little bit of time. So, again, diffuse, right? That's not a problem. I've been there. Empathize, right? But just putting that aside, let's say you had the money, like, or let's say you had the time, what would be your next step? And then
Mhm.
you confirm, right? After isolating, you confirm. Okay, so what I'm hearing is that you're 100% in, but the only thing that's keeping you from moving forward is, being able to put the money together. Is that right?
Yeah.
And see my expressions as I'm saying that stuff. I don't know if you've noticed, but it's very low key. It's very like objection handling is all about state.
Mhm.
If you're like this and you're anxious and you're trying to convince them, like they'll be scared. But if you're kind of like laid back and you're like, yeah, man, totally fine. But I don't know. Let's say you had the money, you know, you're kind of in the good vibe. Like, what would you do? What would be your next step?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, cool. So like what I'm hearing then is that like you're 100% in, right? And I kind of wink at them like you're 100% in, but it's just really figuring out, the money part, right? Kind of make it a joke, like, hey man, it's not a big deal. Like you can be honest with me.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not obvious, right? You don't have to say, hey, you can be honest with me. Your body language gives that away so they feel comfortable with you and they can tell you what they're really thinking.
Mm-hmm.
And then you go into solving mode, right? And this is the first one I want to tackle today. The rest, I don't think we should do it because it can
Mm-hmm.
become a bit overwhelming. And it's the money logistical, right? So once you identify that it's money logistical, you do what we call the open wallet, which is just a fancy way of saying how much money they got in the wallet. And wallet represents everything they have, right? Bank, card, whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, okay. Is it okay if we go a little bit into your finances? Yeah, totally fine. Awesome. So, um, in terms of what you have at the moment after expenses, right? Saved up or able to allocate, how much would you say you'd be able to invest as an initial investment? We have
Mm-hmm.
1500. Okay. Would you be able to push that to 1800 or 2K? Yeah, I could do 1800. Okay. Awesome. So, and what about 15 days from now or 30 days from now? How much more do you think you'd be able to do? Mm, I think I could do maybe another 2000. Okay, sounds good. Um, or no, maybe 1500. Okay. So, what if we did what about 30 days after that? Oh, I could do 1500 again. Okay, so what if we did 1500 every 30 days? Would that work? Would that, like, let's say I could do that for you. Would that be helpful? Right? Not would that work for you? Like, would that be helpful?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So that's the best case scenario. You just had an installment plan done. Then the next scenario is okay, I don't have the money. Okay. Or like they say, I have $200 or I have 1,000 or I have 2,000. Oh, what about the rest? I don't have the rest. Okay. So there are other people that join this program that use other forms of funding. For example, credit cards, a loan, or borrowing from family and friends. Is that something you'd be open to? Right? Yeah, I'm open. Okay, cool. So I'm just wondering, like, do you have a credit card potentially? Right, and then you go into all the options, and finally, you can go into selling stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right? Honestly, man, I always use this story. Like, honestly, man, we had this guy that joined the program. He sold a van just so he could have the money to get in. That's kind of crazy, but like, is there something you could potentially sell in your life in order to be able to join?
Mm-hmm.
They'll laugh a bit, like, so it will diffuse the tension a little bit, right? So they don't feel embarrassed about the money part.
Yeah.